Fallout 4 takes place in post-apocalyptic Boston, Massachusetts, and any of you who have been to the area in real life know how common of a sight it is to see a Dunkin Donuts location. Seriously, it seems like you can't walk for 5 minutes in any direction without seeing one of these places. They're basically on every corner. So in Fallout 4, Bethesda referenced this with the company Slocum's Joe, a coffee and donuts chain with their mascot Doughboy. Now, in the state of Massachusetts alone, there are over 1,000 Dunkin Donuts locations. Here's a map if you're curious. But guess how many Slocum's Joe locations are in Fallout 4? 6. Seriously? I guess I get that the developers didn't want to completely cover the map with these, but if this is supposed to be the Fallout equivalent of Dunkin Donuts, then the amount of locations is very unimmersive. So in this video, we will follow the adventures of Joe Slocum, the owner and CEO of the Slocum's Joe Corporation before the war. Frozen in Vault 111, he now emerges to rebuild his company and fill the Commonwealth with Slocum's Joe shops. He's very charismatic, because he's a businessman, and while he'll never admit it, he's very lucky because running a successful business does require a lot of luck. He's also quite strong because he used to be a heavyweight champion back in his younger years. Now he is a heavyweight because of all the donuts, but that's besides the point. Once the people get some coffee and donuts in this system, Boston can become a thriving city once again. First, he'll need to find the old company headquarters to get started. He left the vault and made his way into the nearby neighborhood of Sanctuary. Here he collected some basic resources. Rule number 1 of business: it's not stealing if no one says you can't take it. He found some equipment to help him survive in the wasteland and a suit to help him survive boardroom meetings. He skipped past the Red Rocket Station since they tried to acquire his company back in the 2070s, and Joe is still sore about it. But a bit further down the road, he found the military checkpoint being guarded by some sort of drone, which he figured would be easy to swat away, but he didn't count on it having a self-destruct failsafe. After recovering from that, he found a magazine that taught him how the Commonwealth economy works. It seems that in the 200 years or so that have passed since nuclear Armageddon, Nuka-Cola bottle caps have become the primary currency in the wasteland. Joe was slightly irked by this, but it's not like using old coffee mugs would be a preferable replacement. No worry though, the Slocum's Joe and Nuka-Cola corporations were actually quite friendly behind closed doors. But nearby, Joe had his first encounter with raiders in the city of Lexington. Rule number 2 of business: if someone shoots at you, kill them so they can't out your bottom line. After dealing with them, he made it to his first Slocum's Joe. The storefront was a bit worse for wear, but he was able to brew up some espresso to give him the energy he needs to keep going. And in the back room, he found a crate with some company supplies that he would be needing soon. And of course, he made some delicious donuts. They're all great, of course, but the chocolate ones always made Joe feel a bit stronger and ready to face the day. Now, this location is actually quite special because before the war, the government approached Joe with a proposition to build a secret government facility under the coffee shop. That government money was great before the war, but now Joe hoped to find useful supplies. To his dismay, he had no way to enter, so he would have to move on. So he went to the bank next door and took out a loan. Yeah, a loan. He'll definitely repay these skeletons later. But his next objective was to find a place to set up a base of operations. He found a nice spot by a river north of Boston near the city of Malden. It turns out swatting mutated bugs is actually quite difficult, but after more attempts than I'd like to admit, Joe managed to claim this settlement. Side note, the vines are floating because I have a mod installed that removes the house from this location, which will make it easier to build something cool here later. But with this settlement claimed, Joe prepared to venture into the city of Malden. He tried to fight some green abominations, but thanks to some nearby Slocum's Joetrons, he made it out alive. These automatrons were built by the Robco Corporation before the war to defend the Slocum's Joe corporate headquarters. One of them was destroyed, but Joe figured he could repair it back at base later. But for now, he surveyed the building to see if it could be restored. Unfortunately, the building was in a state of disrepair, too much to try and rebuild it. This confirmed his suspicions. He would have to build a new headquarters for the company. On the top floor, he found that his office was still mostly intact, but some squatters were hanging out inside. After removing them from the premises, Joe found an old note in his desk. You see, before the war, the company came up with a new product. The best of coffee and donuts in one. Slocum's Buzz Bites. Unfortunately, they never made it to market because the government said that they had a 90% chance to cause third-degree burns when eaten due to the chemically preserved hot coffee. But thankfully now the pesky government regulations are gone, and Joe can finally sell these to the hungry customers of the Commonwealth. But more importantly, this office holds a Slocum's Joe franchise kit, which has all the information required on how to construct Slocum's Joe store locations. Now Joe can finally start building some storefronts to sell coffee, donuts, and Buzz Bites. He returned to base to start building, but quickly ran out of resources. Now, before the war, this wouldn't have been an issue. He would just buy the supplies he needed to make a store, but all of his pre-war money would do him no good. He would need to find a way to make caps. Obviously, that would mean selling coffee and donuts, but he would also need the agricultural resources necessary to make them. This meant that Joe would need to buy a farm. He found a local farm and tried to hire them, but they were more interested in some locket raiders stole from them. Begrudgingly, Joe made his way over to this old satellite station to take out the raiders. Along the way, he found this guy trying to clear out a quarry filled with water. Joe figured this could be a good supply of concrete, so he helped him out. This Sully guy seems trustworthy. There's not much to say about the raider camp, but he grabbed the locket and any supplies he could before heading back to the farm. The settlers were grateful and agreed to work for him. Now Joe has a farm supplying him, but taters and melons aren't the best ingredients for donuts and coffee, so he would need to find some razor grain. So this trip ended up being an important endeavor to the future of his business empire. And thanks to this supply run, he was able to find the parts needed to repair Doughboy, the company mascot whose mere existence summoned a storm. With his new pal watching his back, Joe went north to the General Atomics Galleria, a shopping center where the General Atomics Corporation planned to show off their Mr. Handy robots. But due to several technical bugs, the grand reopening never happened. The greeter mistook Joe for the new supervisor, which granted him access to the Central Control Center. After a slight misunderstanding, Joe convinced the robot to activate the reopening. This updated all the robots, allowing Joe to roam freely. Most importantly to the Slocum's Joe here to grab more supplies.
Welcome to Slocum's Joe. Can I set you up with a nice hot cup of coffee? On the house.
Sure.
Well then, help yourself. Due to liability concerns, we are now a self-service location.
But besides trying to bull, Joe mainly just looted the place, giving him enough resources to finally complete the Slocum's Joe corporate headquarters. The first floor has a shop with seating areas where you can get in line to place your order. Upstairs is the employee office area with desks for future workers. And Joe's personal office space is located on this floor, along with his temporary living space, since he doesn't have a house yet. The workers sleep outside in a tent for now, at least until they threaten to unionize. This will be the largest location, since it will be the base of operations, but now Joe can begin to get down to business and have some real fun. Managing supply chain issues. He returned to his farm and told his employees to begin farming razor grain. This will be step 1 of the process. Step 2 will be the manufacturing of the products, which for now will happen at the individual stores. Perhaps in the future this could be automated in a factory, but that idea is a little too grand for now. And step 3, profit by selling the coffee and donuts. So Joe made his way to a major trading center in the Commonwealth, Bunker Hill. Here he could sell his products to the traders who would sell them to the people of the wasteland. Once these people taste his amazing products, they will seek out his stores to buy more. He bought a gun named the Wastelander's Friend, which does more limb damage, somehow. However, it just so happens that he found 2 more legendary 10mm pistols on the way to Diamond City, so how's that for luck? Also along the way was a laundromat full of donut mix and coffee tins. Yeah, for some reason these items can spawn in random containers around the maps, and some locations like this can have a ton. Anyway, Joe made it to the Commonwealth's largest town, Diamond City. This place was brimming with economic opportunity, but to get inside he would have to have this awkward interaction with a reporter. Ugh, I hate the press, you know what I mean? But after avoiding the reporter and Mayor McDonough, Joe made his way inside the city to sell his goods to the merchants, and grabbed a magazine that makes his robot companion stronger. He also made his way over to the shack where a kid sells water. But the water isn't the most interesting thing here. No, it's the fact that this kid is a hoarder of sugar bombs, which can be used to make donut mix. So, yeah, stealing a child's cereal is honestly a little bit evil, but you don't become the CEO of a major corporation without being a little evil sometimes. But Joe remained undetected, and as long as that nosy reporter doesn't hear about this, Slocum's Joe should be in the clear of any legal trouble. But upon returning to HQ, Joe was informed by an employee that some gunners had been sneaking around the place. Almost immediately after, a squad of them showed up to attack the building. Joe and his employees fought them off, but this left Joe with more questions than answers. Who are these gunners? Why did they scope out the place and attack? Do they hate coffee and donuts? Anyway, after this, Joe did some more business work, including hiring new employees, managing crops at the farm, outfitting farmers with brand apparel, and searching for a new storefront location. His search led him to Hangman's Alley, a location currently occupied by raiders, but once they're taken care of, the location becomes free real estate. But to turn this into a new store location, he would first need to set up a supply line, so he constructed a new automaton to do this for him. The great thing about robot workers is that you don't have to pay them, but they are expensive to build and maintain, so you know it's a trade-off. Speaking of workers, the new employee who showed up at the new location looks suspiciously like a raider, but there's no way to do background checks these days, so whatever. But with this new storefront established in the heart of Boston, business will be booming. And across the street is an old apartment building Joe can use to house his employees so they don't have to live in tents anymore. Now, if the city could only get public transportation up and running again. But for now, Joe has once again established the Slocum's Joe Corporation in Massachusetts. So far, he's built a new headquarters, as well as a new franchise location, and set up a farm to keep the company supplied. However, his plans for the future are grand. He wants to build a Slocum's Joe franchise at every settlement possible, as well as recover the supplies from old stores around Boston. And maybe even build a factory to mass produce the Slocum's Joe products for distribution across the Commonwealth. That's why I always say, the Commonwealth runs on Slocum's. Wait, sorry, legal is telling me I can't say that. Okay, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, comment, leave a comment, let me know what you think. More content on the way soon. Hope you all enjoyed this. I've had this idea for a while. It's been something I wanted to do, so I'd like to continue it. More adventures of Joe Slocum, CEO of the Slocum Joe Corporation. I thought this was a pretty fun idea, so I hope you enjoyed. Let me know. And yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.